I'm not originally from Inverclyde, although I suppose Inverclyde would have had the same sort of problems. I grew up in East End of Glasgow, and thinking about sort of stigma, I grew up a Catholic and I first started school in 1980. I know you probably think that's a lie, but it was 1980. And back then, bigotry was quite in the west coast of Scotland. It was really rife, and me and my pals had to walk by what was known then as the Proddy school to get to your school. And I remember things like go back home getting shouted at you, go back to Ireland, the famine's over and stuff like that. And so that's probably the first time. And then growing up in Easterhouse had this reputation, and big house and scheme, a lot of crime, a lot of violence, a lot of drugs and stuff. And even as a young boy, you knew you were growing up in an area like that had that sort of reputation. And later on in life, getting involved in drugs and stuff and becoming a drug addict, ending up homeless and having to go to services and stuff. So stigmatised in all those three areas, I suppose. And how did it make me feel? My self-esteem and all that was already low. You're addicted to drugs, you're wondering why you ended up in that place. And I maybe stigmatised myself, I think. For me personally, most of my problems came from, there was stigma there, but most of them came from how I thought about, how I stigmatised myself. You boxed yourself off from all those things. You're Catholic, you're Irish, living in Scotland, you're from the East End, you're from Easterhouse, and you're now a drug addict. And how I perceived myself in my environment sort of stigmatised myself. And that then, when I had to go into meet different people to get help and stuff, I was having all these thoughts and how I perceived how they spoke to me. I can think back, and there was a bit of stigma there with how people were treating me, but I think the biggest problems came with how I stigmatised myself. I left school in '92. Again, I can west coast of Scotland, when you've got a name like Kevin, people know what sort of side of the divide you're from. And I can remember job interviews for sort of smaller businesses where that would actually come out in the interview. Oh, so you're a Celtic fan, a name like Kevin and all that, just getting it out there. Because I actually went to a Protestant high school, so on my applications you wouldn't have been able to know, because there was no St. Leonard's or whatever high school you went to. Your postcode, I'm from the East End, I'm from Easterhouse, that would get brought up in job interviews when I was going for my YTS and all that when I was younger. And as a drug addict, I started prescribed medication to combat that, and dying to get out of the life I was living. And I was applying for colleges and getting accepted onto colleges, and I'd be at Langside College, which I had to start at 9 o'clock, but I couldn't pick my medication up to 10 o'clock. And obviously you can't just give a drug addict loads of drugs to take away for a week, but I'd get into college, I'd always be late. And you're studying social sciences, and a lot of people are open-minded in these sort of, but there was also some people, when you put your opinions across, they were just brushing it off when you were in class and stuff. And so again, you're already feeling bad about yourself, and when stuff like this happens, it just makes it harder. I think the way my life turned out, and I come from a big family and stuff, and I go up and visit them, and when I see my big brothers and my sisters and stuff, and I can see how growing up where we grew up, and not to, but it's like blinkers sort of thing, whereas I've ended up in a right mess where I've had to get myself clean, and then I have to look back and say, right, what sort of things led me into this? And I've had to look at how I grew up, and how I stigmatised myself, how I've been stigmatised against, and that's made me just accept that, I don't know, some people will be open-minded and want to learn things, and then there's going to be some people that are just I'm coming from an addiction perspective. There's some people that are just going to be like, I don't want to know about addicts and stuff. I've got a family member that might be ill with some other disease and they want to learn about that rather than what sort of stuff does an addict feel stigmatised against. So I think just getting into recovery, looking back over my life, I've stigmatised against people. So I can accept when someone feels that way towards me as a drug addict, an ex-drug addict. And it's just made me open. As I grew older and got into recovery, I've just became more open-minded, and if people want to sort of feel that way about my past, there's absolutely nothing I can do. And I just make sure people I've got in my life are more open-minded. It's pretty massive, isn't it, to educate the whole community on stigma and stuff. When I was up in Glasgow, we opened up a recovery cafe, and as the chairperson I wanted to, it was all guys in recovery that were on my committee and stuff, and I opened it up and invited members of the community on, because a lot of times the community will only see people caught up in addiction. Police officers only see people getting the jail and stuff. They never see what people do in their recovery and stuff. And that was a wee idea I brought members of the community in to join our board and our committee and stuff, so they could see all the stuff we were doing, and that people do recover and change and actually become a benefit to their community. As a way of breaking down stigma. I might not have worded it that way because I've not got that big a vocabulary, but that was the whole idea. Let people in the community see that people do recover and actually do well with their lives and want to help people.